Now, we are truly honored to have with us Donald Harrison, a 2022 NEA Jazz Master, the most prestigious award given in the United States to jazz musicians and advocates. He will be joining Greg and Aryeh for a conversation exploring blues and jazz as a wisdom tradition. Gentlemen, please begin.
Thank you, Lauren. Hello, Mr. Harrison. Thank you so much for being with us. It really is a pleasure and an honor. And just so our audience will have a sense of who they're listening to, yes, Mr. Donald Harrison is a 2022 NEA Jazz Master. He's also connected to jazz royalty. Donald Harrison played with people like Roy Haynes, who played with Charlie Parker and Bud Powell and Thelonious Monk, and he's a link in that chain. And it really is a privilege and an honor to have him with us. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Harrison.
Well, thank you for having me on this, as part of this great conversation. It's truly an honor and a great undertaking that you are doing for humanity.
Thank you very much. So my first question, Mr. Harrison, when we were speaking recently, you mentioned how important it was to you that you grew up in a city like New Orleans, which was just so full of music, and that you also grew up with musicians around you and in your family, and you were influenced by them. Could you please tell us a little bit about how much of your musical personality, how much of your artistic personality was shaped by where you grew up and your influences?
Yeah, well, I grew up here in New Orleans, and we know that this is one of the root contributors to the music of the world. I grew up going to what they call second line functions with the brass bands, the same way that Louis Armstrong and Sidney Bechet did his youth. Later on, I started playing in the bands. And I also grew up in a culture that comes out of Congo Square, because my father was a big chief. So I had both of those, so I was able to be like Sidney Bechet. He linked up Congo Square and other early jazz artists. I'm a modern jazz artist who was also linked up with the music from Congo Square and the traditional music. So I know the connections to the music from being on the inside of both of those cultures. Then at home, I heard all types of music. My parents played things from the UNESCO series, music from the Philippines, classical music, music from Broadway, jazz music. So music from Cuba, music from everywhere. And they put all of those things inside of me. So
wow.
I always thought of music as being everything. I never thought that you had to separate a certain sound from another sound. I always thought they were connected. And over time, I found a lot of those connections. So I'm just very happy.
Yeah, and
that, I have the roots inside of me, and then those roots are called from roots to infinity now. That you can take these ideas and go to the furthest corners of the universe.
I'm sure.
But still be grounded in the firmament of the music.
Yes, and that experience of universality is in your music, is expressed through your attempt to bring people together, and your love of and openness to different genres, and your willingness to listen to all kinds of music. That said, it's still important to you to be grounded in the blues tradition and jazz history. Why is it important to be grounded in the blues tradition and jazz history?
Well, there's a lot of ideas in music, but the blues is what I call, and a lot of the older musicians I was around, they call it one of the cornerstones of the music. So to have that in your sound, you have to be around it, and maybe you have to grow up in it. But if you listen to Charlie Parker, he's a blues player. If you listen to Sidney Bechet, he's a blues player. If you listen to Louis Armstrong, they're all blues artists. That's all part of what they do. John Coltrane, Miles Davis used to say, "I'm just tooting the blues." So, you know, to master something, you have to have all the components. So since blues is a component, you have to go and deal with it. But it was natural for me, I think. I just enhanced it by being around and learning from a lot of people who are masters of the genre.
And with learning with all of these masters, if I can ask you one more question, please. What is some of the most important wisdom, musical wisdom and life wisdom, that you've learned from the jazz masters?
I learned to be true to yourself, the main lesson. And I learned that they were inclusive. The greatest ones were inclusive. And I came up with a statement, to be exclusive, you have to be inclusive. The more you add to who you are, it shapes a very exclusive sound. And if you look at a person like Charlie Parker, you never saw him put down another artist, or John Coltrane, or Sidney Bechet. And that's one of the things I loved about those guys. And if you read about Charlie Parker, they say he was very encouraging to everyone. So, and he was very inclusive in his style of music and the way he played. Everything he heard, he added to the sound of music. So those are the ideals that I try to uphold in what I do.
And you uphold
the beauty in everybody, and to be inclusive. And another idea that I have is, if the music comes from the people, then they will understand it. So, you know, if you put down Second Line or put down Louis Armstrong, you know, then maybe you have a different idea about the music. And so I wrote a song at 19 called New York Second Line, where I merged the sound of the second line into a modern jazz context, for what I was listening to in New York. And at that time, even the New Orleans musicians didn't get it. But now, you know, guys are dealing with that sound. So that's the part about following your path. The people who may not understand something initially, if it has some feeling from the heart that's true, then you turn them around and make them, you know, what Mr. Murray was saying, they have to reevaluate themselves.
That's right.
So I think just me being true to who I am and what I love has turned a lot of musicians around. My friend Craig Handy has a band called Second Line Smith that he's dealing with that sound. And he's from the Bay Area. So you see people, but it started initially with me having to fight even musicians to say, this is what I love. I came from the second line. Even musicians from New Orleans. I love the second line. It's just part of me. It's just a natural thing.
That's right.
So you just have to, at every moment, just be yourself, but also do your work.
That's right. Mr. Harrison, I'm sorry that our time is so brief, and I can assure you that you are an authentic continuation of everything that you described. So thank you so much for coming, for being with us and talking with us. And now...
Thank you so much, Donald.